All right, so for those of you who don't know me, I'm Matias. I'm one of the people who's been hanging around these Ruby things for a few years. And if you want to know more, my website address is on the slide. So I'm here to talk about Rust and how it fits into the Ruby ecosystem. So let's start with a short introduction into what Rust actually is. And to quote Wikipedia, it's a multi-paradigm, high-level, general-purpose programming language that emphasizes performance, type safety, and concurrency. It enforces memory safety, ensuring that all references point to valid memory without requiring the use of a garbage collector or reference counting present in other memory-safe languages. Or to paraphrase, it's a programming language that's with an emphasis on performance, and it makes it very hard to leak memory. So it looks something like this. Quite familiar if you've ever programmed in a C-like language. You can assign variables and things, and you can print things. And then you can make method calls with implicit returns or alternatively explicit returns. So kind of like Ruby, except quite different as well. And that's my short introduction into Rust. So now you all know Rust. But how does Rust fit in with Ruby? At the beginning of this year, this blog post was published, and this feature was merged into Bundler. So it's now super easy to create a new Ruby gem with Rust-based native extensions. So you just use the same gem skeleton generator you did before. Well, you just call it with this ext equals Rust parameter, and you get a Ruby gem with built-in support for Rust extensions. Don't worry if you can't read it, it's unimportant. So there's a few interesting files. There's a cargo.toml file, which is basically your gem file for Rust. There's another one for other reasons, and there's a little external xconf rb that configures the native extension. And then there's a lib.rs file where you can actually stick your Rust code. So, for example, this Hello World program, it has some boilerplate there from something called Magnus, which we'll touch upon in a moment. But basically, you can print out code or print out text from within Rust. And then there's some more boilerplate to expose those methods to the Ruby world. So that word Magnus there, it's a project that provides sort of glue code or bindings between Ruby and Rust, which makes it really easy to integrate the Rust methods and data types into the Ruby world. So for example, it mangles the data types. So you can return, for example, an integer of varying sizes from Rust, and you get an integer in Ruby. Or Booleans get mapped and strings get mapped. And it mostly works as you would expect. And then for some reason, I decided to do a demo at this point, so wish me luck. So here's my awesome Rust program. As you can see, it's basically what we generated earlier with some compiled code already, because I already compiled it today. And then I'm going to cheat because I don't remember what I need to run. Let's run a normal bundle install. And then we compile the Rust parts. I hope we compile the Rust parts. And then through Ruby, we can run this method. And it calls Rust and prints out hello, whatever, which is something that would never be possible in Ruby. And if we look inside here, you can see we have some Ruby code, regular gem stuff, the boilerplate, and then we have the Rust code that prints to the console. And as a brief digression, you can also call Ruby from Rust. So you can embed your Ruby code inside Rust if that's something you want to do. But what you cannot do is embed Ruby in Rust that's embedded in Ruby, because I tried that and I was very disappointed it doesn't work. But something that you'd actually maybe want to do is to integrate a Rust library into your Ruby gem. And for this, I've chosen this very high performance library that wraps text. And again, for some reason, I chose to do a demo instead of just, recording it. But I'm cheating. I use Git. Do bundle install and then compile again because the Rust code has changed. And then we call this method with some text. You can see it wraps the code, and we can even use the default values, pass in nil. And if we go back to looking at code, you see we're using this text wrap fill setting, and then we pass the length as an option. And if it's nil, it gets unwrapped, or if it isn't nil, it gets unwrapped. And if it is nil, it uses a default of 80 characters. And we slightly changed the contents to better reflect what the thing is called. So it's now Rust wrap instead of hello Rust. So that's it. And then, well, I could have showed you that there as well. There's a new dependency on text wrap. Yeah, we covered this. So yeah, upside, you can write native extensions without needing to write C, which is good news for those of us who don't know any C. And also, you don't need to worry about the sort of memory leakage issues you get with if you're writing pure C. And I guess the main downside is that you do need to have the Rust toolchain installed unless you cross-compile the gem for the platforms you use, which I won't get into here. And well, if you want to read more, there's the original blog post from Bundler. There's a docs for Magnus. And then for Rust itself, you should go look at the Rustlinks course and the Rust documentation itself. And if you want to see the code from this presentation, it's on my GitHub. And that's all. Thanks.